Good morning. My name is Gladys Manzanet, and I am the president and co-founder of the Latino Veterans Legacy of Valor Foundation. I am honored to be with you today as moderator and as part of the War Memorial Center's education program. We are joined by two of my favorite people today. Yolanda Medina, she's the director of the Military and Veterans Resource Center at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, also known as Maverick. She and her late husband are pioneers in veterans issues, and she's also the board member of the War Memorial Center and the LVLV Foundation. She wears many hats, and we'll get into some more about that in a little bit to learn a little bit more about Yolanda, her military service, and we're going to keep that context in mind. George Banda is a retired local hero from the Milwaukee Fire Department and Vietnam veteran. Since retirement, he has embarked on a second chapter in the role of Veterans Advocate Extraordinaire. He serves in a number of capacities and in the veterans community, and we'll get into a little more about that and his personal story as well. So I can't wait to begin. So George, I'm going to start with our first question for our little Facebook Live here. So say hello and wave to all the people that are joining us today.
Hello,
George,
everybody. Good morning.
so excited. Um, George, your grandparents immigrated from Mexico. Where did they settle in the U.S. and how did you end up in Milwaukee?
Well, yes, my grandparents from Mexico settled in a small little town called Mirando City, Texas. It's a population about 300. And that's where they settled and lived. I was actually born there in my little old house with my mom and dad. And so I never got to a hospital, just born right at home. Um, so in 1953, if I was born in 1948, in 1953, my parents, my dad, and he had an uncle that was living in Wisconsin and had told my dad that there was a lot of work here up in Wisconsin in Milwaukee. So my dad and my mom packed us all up and dragged me kicking and screaming to Wisconsin. Uh, it was cold here. Wasn't used to that. So, but we settled here and I grew up here and I consider myself a Wisconsinite now.
Mm. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And Yolanda, for you, when your family immigrated here to the U.S., how did they come to Wisconsin?
Well, I'm a fourth generation American, so we don't know of our roots in Mexico. We have no direct ties anymore. So we always say our homeland is Texas. So my parents were born and raised in Texas, and they actually came up as migrant workers. They were in Wisconsin, all of the states going up into Michigan. And then as the back and forth got tiring and boundary work was opening up in the southeast Wisconsin area, they all began to settle. So now all of my immediate family lives in the southeastern Wisconsin area.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you both for sharing that. I think as we look back, both of you kind of represent two different generations. And what I wanted to do is get into, where did you go to school? What was your life like as a teenager here? And what was our area like, as you were growing up, especially for Latinos?
Well, for me, growing up in Milwaukee, South Side, there was a Latino community already present. And so we settled in and felt very comfortable there. Uh, obviously cultivated a lot of friendships there in Milwaukee South Side, National Avenue. There was one Mexican restaurant, so I remember that. And yeah, we felt comfortable there with other Latino families, and went to school, grade school, Holy Trinity Grade School in Milwaukee, and then on to Boys Tech, then into the service. But yes, growing up with a Latino neighborhood, was just the way I thought everything was until I got into the service and moved and saw that there was other things out there that I wasn't aware of, but found out pretty quickly and learned fast how
Wow.
to live
What about,
outside. Yes.
oh, wow. What about you, Yolanda?
Kind of the same thing. We grew up in a Latino neighborhood.
Mhm.
We had our family that was around us. We went to church with Latino families, and then we just went to school with the rest of the community. And we didn't realize that we had segregated ourselves or that we were in a segregated community. It just felt normal. Nothing felt different. like George said, until you joined the military and you saw other parts of the world, other parts of the country, and thought, wow, I really was separated from the community. Only I didn't realize it at the time that I was growing up. And I grew up in Waukesha, so even less Latino families. And when we wanted to do things that were particularly in the Mexican community, we'd go out to Milwaukee to get things done.
Wow. So for both of you, and you both mentioned your military service, was that an option growing up? How was that presented? Like, how did you come to find the military as a vocation? And George, I'll start with you.
Okay. Yes. In my family, we had my uncles definitely were in World War II, and they talked a lot about World War II and their experiences. And my friends also in the neighborhood, many of them were joining the service, and it was an option. One of the options that we had in the community and in our family was for military service. And I remember my uncles talking about it and how proud they were to have served. And then having my friends going into the Marines and Air Force, Army. So I thought, yeah, that's an option. I remember them coming back on leave and saying how they liked it, how they got the chance to see the country and the world, and it was a good way to get out of the neighborhood and to see the world and to experience the world outside of our neighborhood.
Wow. So you come from a long line of military, those who served in the military. Yolanda, was that the case for you?
Yes, I had uncles that served in World War II and in Korea and in Vietnam. So we saw the pictures hanging on the walls, the men in their uniforms, never any women in uniform. And it really wasn't an option. I mean, it wasn't a consideration for me. I was going to college. That was my trajectory. It wasn't until I met a boy who was determined to join the Marine Corps from the age of 14 on. But his reasoning was he wanted to prove how American he was. He grew up in Oconomowoc, eventually became my husband. And so his constantly talking about the military made me interested in going into the military.
Thank you for sharing that for both of you. I think gives us a really great sense of how Latinos have grown up with that sense of patriotism and service to country. When you were choosing the military service that you wanted to join, how did you choose which branch you wanted to join, the job? Like talk us through some of that. And George, I'll start with you.
All right. Yes, I remember right out of high school, and during my last year, senior year in high school, one of the options I was looking at it was the military, and I was looking at a lot of the flyers and going to the recruiters to see which would be a good fit for me. And as I was doing that, I received a letter, an invitation from the government to say, well, you know what, you're going to join the Army now. So that was my invitation, and I said, okay. My mind was made up for me, and I welcomed it, and I said, okay. I was proud to serve. I wanted to serve and give back. So, and I went, and eyes wide open, and what an experience. Let me tell you.
Wow. So invitation, is that code for draft? Is that what that is? Okay. Well, I love that you put it in those terms. And also too, you can sense just how proud you were of that and just your experience. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Yolanda?
Well, again, my decision was driven by Joe. And he always knew he wanted to be a Marine. That uniform, those dress blues, he wanted that blood stripe down his leg. And so when I decided to join with him, I was already a freshman in college. And I went to take the test, and I aced the mechanical portion of the test. But that's the kind of mind that I have: computing, mathematics, those type of things. So the recruiter was really excited about that and said, you need to go into aircrafts. And I'm like, okay. I didn't have any desire or any idea of what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to follow this cute boy. So, and the Marine Corps uniform, hey, it's a pretty cool uniform. So that's what I did. I followed the trajectory that the recruiter gave me, and that's how I ended up in the Air Wing in the Marine Corps.
What I love about that story is that there's so many norms that you bucked, right? Making that decision, right? There was the norm of Latinas serving in military, not a decision. Latinas being great in math and science and having that mechanical brain, and you were like, nope, that's And I feel like all of those things that we typically were in our culture, how it's so ingrained in us, all
Mhm.
those things, or like you were a pioneer from the beginning. You and Joe just taking on the world. I love it. When you think back on your military service, or even so with George, even speaking to you about, did you know friends that were also joining you, and when you got your invitation to join the military, did you go with friends? Did you go with family? What was that like for you?
Well, at that time in the 60s, I did know a few that were going in the service with me, but once you get into the service, we were separated. I know there was a buddy system at one time, but I didn't get involved with the buddy system. I just went in by myself. But I knew other people, and as I was going in there with them, we got separated, and I never saw him again until we got leaves or something that we got together back at home. But at that time, you went in by yourself. You went to boot camp. Obviously, you made friends in boot camp, and a lot of close relationships in boot camp. And one of those things about boot camp is you help each other out to get through that. And so a lot of friendships were cultivated, and I still have friends from boot camp even to this day. So yeah, it was quite an experience. Again, going alone and surviving that.
Yeah.
It's quite a challenge. It's so far out of that experience that I had at home and in high school. It is so different, the
Mm.
military.
Mm.
So going in, I love that you said that you go in and you might feel like you're going in alone, but you end up with brothers, right? Can you tell us about any particular friends that you currently have now that are still in your life? Like tell us about that friendship.
All right, the friendships that well, there's a guy named Fernando Rodriguez that we went to high school together, and he went into the Marine Corps. He joined the Marine Corps, and so even though he was in the Marine Corps and I was in the Army, we kept in touch and we saw each other every so often. And so I've known Fernando since high school, and in fact, I just saw Fernando the other day. So yeah, and there was a lot of other friends that from the neighborhood. We
Mhm.
kept in touch. I guess growing up in the neighborhood that we were in, the Latino neighborhood, we were so close that we continued that a close relationship, from high school through military, civilian life. Fernando, and there was an Armando Lopez, and many others that I still see on and off, and we get together every so often and tell our little war stories.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so I see you not only embracing those friendships, but also you've also kind of brought them along, and they brought you along, right, into serving as an advocate for veterans. So we thank you not only for those friendships, but also how you've been able to spur that into some really great community work as well. Yolanda, we had talked a little bit about how you bucked the system a couple of times in different ways. Tell us about how your family reacted to you joining the military.
They were very unhappy
Oh.
because I was already in my freshman year in college. I was the first of any of my family actually to complete high school and then go on to college. So I didn't tell them I was joining. I kind of kept it a secret until a few weeks before I was going into boot camp, when I finally had to say, hey, I'm leaving here in a few weeks. And they were really, really upset. The money that they had put into my first year of school alone at Carroll College was really upsetting to them, and they didn't understand why I needed to do this. There'd always, and they knew it was because of Joe, and they said there'll always be boys. You don't have to follow this particular boy. Stay in college, wait till he gets out. Do the marriage thing afterward. But I really, by the time I had joined, I was really locked into the idea of knowing that I was going to be a Marine, and I wanted to do it.
I love that. So did that change over time? I mean, you were with Joe for a really long time, so I'm assuming things smoothed over time.
It did. When we graduated from boot camp and my parents came down to see us, excuse me, as soon as my dad saw me in my uniform, he started to cry. And he was just so proud, and he just couldn't stop hugging me. And it wasn't until I saw my mom put our boot camp pictures on our living room wall that I knew she was happy. Because once you get a picture on the wall, then you know you're in. And she had my high school graduation picture up there, but as soon as I saw my picture in my dress blues, I knew that she was happy that I was in the military.
Oh, I love that. I think too that harkens back to just our family and how, that's a very cultural thing. I don't know if many people in other cultures have that, but once you make the wall, then right? You made it, right? I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. I think too, we talked a little bit about how George and his friends and all of us are kind of like roped into just service and advocacy, for veterans. But also too, did you feel supported as a Latina in the military? Talk to us a little bit more about that, because I know it has to have been a different situation for you, and would love to hear more about that.
When you're in uniform, you really don't have gender or cultural background. Everybody says that everybody bleeds green, So when I was in uniform on base, I was another Marine. It wasn't until I took my uniform off and went to the grocery store or, did something off base. And then I don't know why people knew everybody in the city was part of the service, but then I became other. I wasn't considered a Marine. They probably thought I was one of the Marines' wives. And then as a Latina, there was very, very few on base. Then you were kind of like, do we talk to her? Do we wait till she speaks first to make sure she speaks English? Because I was in North Carolina.
Wow.
And so I got a new driver's license in North Carolina, and the lady, I didn't even pay attention to it at the time. But when I looked at it, it said BF. And I'm like, BF? And she goes, yeah, Black female. I said, I'm of Mexican descent. She goes, oh. And it didn't even click to her that was anything other than black and white. She goes, well, I can't change it now, so you just keep that.
Wow.
So it was just so weird to have an identity that people didn't understand.
Wow. George, did you face any discrimination in the service? And if so, like, how did you handle that? Or even outside the service too, because it sounds like within the service that probably wasn't the case, but would love to hear your stories too.
Right. Yeah, in the service, absolutely. I agree with Yolanda. Is you're one of the guys or one of the girls that you're serving with. Everybody's the same. You're a private or a corporal or a sergeant, and that's it. There's no color to identify you. So I had no problems in the military. It's when I took that uniform off and went out into outside the service areas that I was in, and once I got outside that fence and moved around with the civilians, then I was treated differently. Absolutely, unfortunately, and to me at the time, well, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I deal with it as best I could, and I think we all do that. And I also was surprised by that because I'm like, I'm just like everybody else. I feel, I bleed, I love, I hate, I mean, I'm a human being, and to be treated differently is kind of traumatic. But you deal with it, and you say, well, there's just a handful of people doing this. Everybody else, for the most part, was treated me as a human being, as another person. So but it is to be discriminated against. Uh, uh, it's something that I wouldn't want anyone to experience,
Right.
but it is part of life, unfortunately. So that it made me stronger
Okay.
to say, okay, so what? Who are
Right.
you to tell me this? I know who I am, I'm moving on.
Right. Do you think that the military handles racism differently? And Yolanda, I'll pose that question to you.
I do,
Hmm.
because rather than deal with it, speak about it, treat it, I think they perpetuate the everybody bleeds green,
Yeah.
because all they have to worry about is the time you're in uniform.
Mm.
When you're out of uniform, they don't seem to handle that well, because really it's their job to train us, to
Hmm.
protect and serve, defend,
Right.
and all those other aspects. I don't know if it's too many layers and they
Mm.
can't dig down deep enough to handle those things, but it's all part of the mental health and wellness.
Right.
So you'd think that they would try,
Hmm.
and I'm sure they have and they are, but at the time that I was in, it was never addressed.
Right. I think I'm glad that you brought that up because I think mental health is so important, especially for our veterans, just making sure that they have a safe space. And, the trauma that they face when they're out and serving is one thing, but then to come back or even face racism on top of that, I think that is one layer of trauma that I don't think many people necessarily one recognize, but also talk about openly. So I thank you for sharing that. Um, what are you most proud of in your military service? And I'll start with you, George, and then pose that question to you, Yolanda.
uh, One of the things I'm most proud of in the military is to have served, and to have served proudly with uh, my country, the United States of America. And it's my country also, and my country too, and I will protect it. And I was most proud of serving my country. Uh, and then something happened. Uh,
Mm,
Leaving Vietnam, coming to America, back home, the country was in turmoil, and I was felt uh, that what I had done was wrong. So then you don't feel proud anymore. You feel like you did something wrong. So it was a
yeah.
real tough time, the first few years coming back from Vietnam. But I think back in of my military uh, time in, uh,
Hmm.
I was very proud of what I did. I
Yeah.
definitely, nobody could change my mind about that now. There was a time where I doubted and
Right.
felt almost ashamed that I had served.
Mm,
But now I'm more like, who were they to tell me? I knew what I did and how I did it, and I did it the best I could. And I was and still proud to have served my country.
wow. George, I thank you for that because I think one of the things that we forget is whenever we meet someone who served, like especially in one of the recent wars, that, it's thank you for your service. There's that thank you for the service. It's almost instant and instantaneous. Um, I don't think people realize that it took a long time for us to get to that. And that's something that you didn't receive almost immediately. Um, and I know that must have been very hard for you. So can you share a little bit more about what that experience was like? And maybe, I mean, only if you want to, because I know that that might be a really hurtful moment in history there for you.
Yeah. It was a real tough time. I know I was going through first of all, I had just come back from a war and saw a lot of trauma. So I'm dealing with the trauma of war, and then coming back and getting all uh, this bad vibe from the country as a
Right.
whole was just overwhelming.
Hmm.
And so to try to deal with those things, and then also you're on top of that being discriminated, as a Latino. Now
Right.
you're Latino, you're a Vietnam vet, and you've got this trauma that you're dealing with.
Hmm.
So there's the, and it was very difficult. I finally reached out, and it was hard to do that, to reach out to someone for help with the group sessions that I had with other Vietnam vets who were going through the same thing. So it was a tough time for me, and I know there was times where I was doing a little bit too much partaking of the alcohol, and that was compounding the situation. So I mean, it was those first 5 years after Vietnam was really tough, trying to keep myself together,
My
going to
screen froze,
school
Amanda.
and a family. Yeah, and not just me. There was a lot of other Vietnam vets who were going through the same thing, and we did finally get together in groups and talked about what we were going through, and that tremendously helped me get through that time, that really difficult time in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. Because I know it was tough, but also too, I know that you've also been a wonderful, I think, solace for many people and been very helpful even since coming back. So thank you for that. Yolanda, so I'm going to pose that question to you. What are you most proud of in your military service?
For a lot of the firsts,
Mm-hmm.
there was very few Latinas in my area that went into the military. I married a Marine. I had 2 children while I was in service. I was on the rifle range at 7 months pregnant, just kind of leaning over to the side so that my stomach didn't get in the way. And I still shot pretty
Wow.
well, not expert,
Mm-hmm.
but I shot sharpshooter. So that was good enough considering I was 7 months pregnant. Like George said, just the idea of that I served my country and I wore the uniform. I didn't feel that the weight of that at the time. It was just something else to do. It was only afterward when I saw pictures and I heard myself tell my own stories that I said, this was something important. This was something impactful that I did with my life.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. You also, before we joined the call, you talked about some of the roles that you served in the military, and that picture behind you has a lot to do with that. Can you share with us your MOS in the military, what you were able to do, what your role was in helping to keep our troops safe?
I was an environmental systems technician on the AV-8As and AV-8B Harriers. So I'm going to try to do my weather girl thing again. I did ejection seats and the canopy because there's pyrotechnics in the canopy, air conditioning, which is right behind the ejection seats, and then oxygen, which way did it go? Oxygen systems were under the rear wheel well. That's a mouthful. So those were the environmental systems that I worked on. And I was the first female in my field on this aircraft.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. The other one of the other stories that you also shared, and we'll kind of get into like life after the military, is you were able to reach a milestone recently. You told us that you left as a freshman in college, and recently, actually now it's a little further along now, but you were able to accomplish a major goal while Joe was still with us. You want to share that a little bit?
Yes. I actually went full circle when we moved back to Wisconsin in '99. I went to work at Carroll University and I started taking courses and just kind of just here and there taking a class. And then Joe actually started to get sick and he said, you know what, you need to finish this degree. I want to see you graduate. So in 2016, I got my undergrad in Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies. And then I lost Joe in 2016. And then I decided to go back to school and I got my master's in adult, community, and professional education.
Oh, I know he would be so proud of you. Well done. Thank you for
And I
that.
just submitted the paperwork for a doctorate of philosophy in adult and continuing education. So
That's
hopefully this
amazing.
fall, I will start my PhD program.
Whew, I'm excited for that. So it's really hard for me to be contained because I just want to like hug you guys. This being virtual, you have no idea how much this is like paining me right now. Like I just want to hug you. So thank you. I mean, I'm so proud of you, and I know Joe and your children, and your grandchildren. I know they're super proud of you too. Well done, Yolanda.
Thank
Um,
you.
Joe, now I'm thinking about Joe. George, what did you end up doing immediately following the military? Would love to know what your post-military career looked like.
Well, when I got out of the service, out of the military, I went to, back then it was called MATC. It was actually Milwaukee Institute of Technology, MIT, but it was MATC now. So I went back to school to try to get an education through the GI Bill. And again, I was having issues with PTSD and everything that comes along with that. So tough times the first 5 years. Finally got myself together. Went back. Went to UW Milwaukee, and was going to UW Milwaukee, and it wasn't a fit for me at the time. There was an opportunity as a firefighter at the Milwaukee County Airport, and I said, you know what? Let me try that. Let's see, because I needed some. I needed that adrenaline rush, that excitement. So I became an airport firefighter and structural firefighter, and that was a good fit for me. I loved that job. I enjoyed. It was very rewarding for me to help people and in need, and I continued that after I retired from the airport fire department and became an advocate for veterans, especially veterans in need, veterans who are underserved, especially Latino veterans. They needed to highlight and recognize the contributions of Latino veterans, and that's where I focused a lot of my time, and still do.
Mm, Thank you for that. What I love about both of your stories is just how much you overcame. You came from very humble beginnings, saw the military as a way to really enrich your lives or follow a boy, right? But the idea was to really, make a contribution as an American patriot, and you both did that. And then the challenges that you faced, right? Raising children in the military, and for you, George, overcoming just the stigma and of that service, and then also just some of the personal trauma that you had to overcome yourself in order to go back to school and have this wonderful vocation that you were able to serve and continue to serve. And in that vein, I wanted to learn a little bit more about how has that service impacted your life? How has it impacted the decisions that you've made thus far? And what does that mean to you? So for you, Yolanda, I'd love for you to start.
Well, after I got out and I was raising children, just doing jobs, working, helping to support Joe in the things that he did. Um, every now and then, nobody really asked me about my service. It was really more about Joe, because you see the male dress blues and it's different. And he had all his paraphernalia in his office, a lot like George there. And so every now and then when somebody caught wind of the fact, oh, you were in the military as well, tell me your story. And then somebody said, hey, what about this veterans group? Or do you know about that veterans group? And while we lived in Texas, I wasn't that involved. I was raising children. It wasn't until we moved back to Wisconsin. And I saw that there was a need. Like George said, there was a Latino veterans group, and I was really surprised. I didn't know that existed. So I was like, yes, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of not only serving our service members, but those of us who, when we're out of uniform, are not considered American. Where did you come from is almost always the first or second sentence that somebody asks you. Oh, so where are you from? Waukesha, Wisconsin. No, but where are you from? So I wanted to be a part of those groups that said, to promote the fact that we are American and that we did American things and we served our country in the same way that anybody else did in uniform.
Thank you for that. What about you, George? What is that
Uh,
service, that
yes,
impact immediately following? What has that meant to you?
yeah, being in the military and being proud of being in the military, and felt a need and to help veterans like myself and like I said, focusing on Latino veterans. And there was a lot of us, but people don't know that or didn't know that. And we needed to, I felt like, and that we needed to highlight, these Latino veterans. And and as an American, and like Yolanda said, people they ask, well, are you Latino? Are you what kind of? Where are you from? Were you born in Mexico? And what? Yeah, I'm an American. I'm an American. Just served in the military, and it does. It befuddles them, and they don't. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. But yeah, we needed to highlight Latino veterans, and they served America because they were American. And so, I continue to do that, and I till my last breath. I think we need to do more, always, and I continue to advocate for veterans and underserved veterans, and all veterans. That's the way I feel about it. I'll
Absolutely.
continue to do that
Yep.
with Yolanda's help, definitely. She is right there always.
Yeah.
And one of my greatest friends. I love her dearly.
Mm. You both are members of the American GI Forum. It's a congressionally chartered Hispanic veterans organization and civil rights organization, and it was founded 73 years ago today. You're both very involved in veteran services, and you have worked so hard. And you've mentioned you can feel the amount of love that you have for your Latino veterans. Why do you think it's so important to recognize them now and always? And Yolanda, I'll start with you.
My motivation started with Joe
Mhm.
because when a lot of times people ask, what war were you in? And they don't understand that when you're in uniform, there's always a conflict somewhere,
Yeah.
whether it's a declared war or not. Joe was in Beirut, Lebanon in '83 when the barracks was bombed and 243 service members were killed, most of them Marines. And so he came back angry, upset, hurt, betrayed, just the whole gamut of moral injury and PTSD. And so I felt like I needed to help him and others who didn't understand what those emotions were and why they were feeling them and how they were right and how to understand them. And so to this day, like George said, all service members, but particularly Latinos, because we have that added layer of the discrimination. And people don't see it as discrimination by discounting us as Americans. They just don't understand. So it's our job to inform. I'm going to paraphrase one of George's speeches one time. Nowak, Schultz, Johnson, these are American names, and Medina and Banda are American names as well. So it is my job to help show people we are Americans too, and to honor what we've done and to help us heal from what we've done as well on the same platform level in areas that other service members, men and women, need.
Absolutely. And George, before we wrap this program, I definitely want you to weigh in on this. What do you want people to know about the Latino service experience, the military service experience?
What I want people to know is that as Latinos, we are proud, and we're proud to serve, and we're proud to serve our country without question. And I remember my uncles and my dad were extremely patriotic for this country. And they were just a first generation Latinos coming to this country. But once they were here, when World War II started, they all lined up to sign up to go and fight in World War II. So we are Americans. We live here. We love it. Obviously, there's issues, and we will continue to face those issues head on and move forward. We are Americans, and and we serve proudly, and we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to raise our voices if we see any kind of discrimination, and I mean, definitely one of the things that the Latinos, especially in the American GI Forum, the organization I belong to, is to put on our youth, to reach out to our youth and try to get the youth involved and be patriotic, and especially to get them educated. Education is very important. It's the motto of the American GI Forum that
Mhm.
the education is the way to go. I mean, it's a must if you want to move forward and upward.
Yeah, I think that's why these forums are so important, because this really bridges, the past with our future and helping our young children understand and know their history. You know, knowing that your grandchildren, Yolanda, they're when they look at their grandmother, they can say that she served proudly along with their grandfather. Understanding what that meant, that pride, and how people served, I think that's so important too. I want to thank both of you so much, not only for sharing your stories, but sharing your passion and also continuing to serve, not only our communities, our veterans communities, but also our Latino community. And we're so grateful to all of you. Every time I connect with both of you, I learn so much more about your stories, and you become even more endearing to me. And so I thank you for your service. I thank you for your sacrifice, for your advocacy for our Latino community and our veterans community. And I don't know where we would be without you. I don't know where we would be to educate our young youth without both of you serving as carriers of that mantle. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Um, and I want to thank our viewers too for taking the time to join us in this experience. Please continue to support the War Memorial Center and their education programs. Continue to view, learn the histories, learn these amazing stories, learn stories of just being able to overcome and persevere. And we have two wonderful examples here with Yolanda and George. We can't thank you enough. It has been a wealth of information and education here, and only because of this platform with the War Memorial Center. So we thank them for that. It has been a true beacon of our community, and we everyone who serves the veterans community thanks the War Memorial Center for that. So thank you all.
Bye.
You're welcome.